Alright, so in today's video we are going to go over how I develop the interfaces to dapps. This is going to be using the Web3.js tool. There are Dapp interface libraries for other languages. I know that there's one for Python. I've used it a couple of times, but JavaScript is definitely the most common and the most well supported, probably just because everybody who wants to make a Dapp tends to want to make it accessible as a website rather than having to download some program. So when you start out, you might just try to put some Web3.js code into a file, and in later seminars we'll go into the Web3 JavaScript code, but for now I'm going to just skip over that. But here, this is my index file. It has some HTML and it has some Web3 code. It's including the Web3 library there. And I'll tell you right now, there's no bugs in this code, or at least no major ones, and it should work. And I saved it onto the desktop. Whoops, right here. And then I load it in my browser, but it doesn't work. And it should work. And MetaMask is unlocked, so it should be loading, but you can see the connection status is not connected, and so it doesn't even try to load the rest of this. Now, if you look for some kind of error message, you won't find any. But what's happening here is, due to security concerns, the Web3.js code won't run if you're just loading it from a local file, as I'm doing here. So to get around that, you need to set up your own web server. And I'll show you how to do this on Ubuntu. It is super simple. You can use a program called xampp, and I'll just load that so you can see what load the page rather, to see what this looks for. You can download this for Windows, and that is how you can set up a server on Windows to get around the same issue. I'm not going to show you how to do that, but that's where you can go if you're a Windows user, as I was until recently. But for Ubuntu, as I said, it's actually really simple. So you're just going to go sudo apt-get install Apache 2. Apache is, I'm sure you've heard of Apache before, and I'm sure you've used apt-get before. So we're just going to do that. Put in your password. And there it goes, setting everything up. And now that it's set up, you will notice that you have a new directory. Well, I don't know if you'll notice it, but the fact is you have a new directory, and it is var www html. And there's nothing there actually right now, but I think if we go to localhost, it loads something, and we can put something in here. Let's just do a test to make sure this is working. If you've done any web development before, you know that index.html is what it'll load if you just try to load that directory. So we're just going to go just do a hi, okay, and save it. Oh, error, writing it, permission denied. I need to oh my goodness, what am I doing? Get out of there. I need to sudo index hi. Close out of that, and now if we load this, it should load index. There we go. So we can see that we have a web host running, and it's when we go to localhost, it serves whatever is in that directory, and since we have an index.html, it'll load that up. And we can actually, what we're going to do is actually remove that, and instead we're going to move our desktop file into there, and you can of course use your file browser. I'm going to be super nerdy and use my command line here. So we're going to move from the desktop index to right here. I need a sudo. Now if I load this, it should load the Dapp, and as you can see, it is now connected correctly. Some of this contract info it's not loading, but that's because I'm on the wrong network. If I go to my Ropsten, and there it goes. Now it loads correctly, and it's not loading my user address, which is interesting. Maybe I just need to refresh. Maybe I have some. Oh, there it goes. So that that solved the problem on Ubuntu, and as I said, on Windows you'll have to get that XAMPP software, or you can always develop on a cloud server too. But that is how you get around it on Ubuntu. So that is the first thing I wanted to show you. Now the next thing that I can show you is how to upload it to GitHub and set up Github Pages, and that is a really easy and cheap. Well, it's not. It's actually free. It's not just cheap. It's free. It's a free way to get your Dapp interface to be public, so anybody can go visit it. So let's do it this way. There's a few different ways you can start a GitHub repository. And of course, if you already have a GitHub repository, you can skip the first part of this. I'm going to assume that you don't, and I'll show you all the steps. So even if you don't know how to use GitHub, you'll at least be able to get started here. Okay, we're going to go to new repository, and I'm just going to call this cool new Dapp. Okay, and I'm going to check initialize this repository with a README. As it says here, it'll let you immediately clone to your computer, which is a nice thing to be able to do. It makes the setup a little easier. Okay, so create. Now I'm going to, now that it's created, well, there's two things I need to do, and I can do them in any order. One, I need to get our interface files onto the repository, and the other thing is I need to turn on GitHub Pages. First, I'm going to get our files there. So to do that, I'm going to copy the URL. I'm going to go to a command prompt and go to our, we have our index file here. I'm going to do a little bit of house cleaning, actually. Make a new directory and put it in there. Cool new. Well, actually, I'm just going to clone because that'll do that for us. So I'm going to go git clone and put the URL in here. When I do this, it'll make a new folder in here. Oh, cannot create. Permission denied. I guess I got to do sudo. There we go. Okay. And now I'm going to move my index file into the new folder. Oh, and again I have to sudo. Okay, so we have that folder, and now we have the index in there as well as the README. So we've just pulled the GitHub onto our computer, this repository into our computer. Well, we cloned it to use the right terminology, and then we put a file in there. And now if we go git status, we can see that it recognizes that there's a new file in there that it's not tracking. And we can also go to localhost. Now if we load this, it's not going to load the file anymore, so because we moved that into the folder. So we can go cool new Dapp, and there it is, we see it again. So now we want to add this file to our repository and push that change back to the remote repository on github.com. So we're going to do that in a few steps here. First, we're going to git add index.html, and I'm having to do sudo every time here, and that is because I'm in the var www.html directory. There's probably a more elegant way to do this, but I'm not really interested in showing you the elegant way. I'm just showing you a quick way to get started. I know that this is, I have a sense that this is going to frustrate a bunch of pro Linux users, but I'm going to ignore that imagined frustration on their part and just keep going here. Alright, so I've added it. I can check the status again, and it says changes to be committed. Whenever I'm typing in git status, you don't really have to do that as part of this step-by-step guide. I'm just doing it to see that everything is working like I expect it to. Okay, now I'm going to go git commit m. This -m means I'm going to give it a message as part of the code. If I omit the m and if I don't put this message that I'm about to put, then it'll open up a text editor for me to put the message in there anyway. So either way, you have to provide a message with the commit, and what you're expected to do here is describe what change you've made. So I'm just going to say added index.html. Oh, and once again I have to go sudo. Okay, and now I could go git status again if I wanted to. I don't really need to. Git push origin master, and now it's going to ask for my login information. Oh my goodness, once again need to say sudo. Let's try again. I'm sure that you can get, it says everything up to date. That is interesting. Oh, so it did successfully push last time. I think it just wasn't able to make some sort of local changes to the file, or my local files here. Once again, because I keep having to do sudo and I forgot to do it. I don't know if the pronunciation of that is sudo or sudo, because it stands for super user do, as far as I understand. In any case, a way you could get around having to use sudo is you could actually change the permissions of this folder. But once again, I'm not going to worry too much about that. Now we should be able to go here to our repository online, refresh, and there is index right there. So we're almost done. Now the last thing we need to do is set this repository, make sure that it has the pages turned on, and I believe it's just right down here in the main settings, and there it is. So GitHub Pages, all we have to do is change the source to master branch. Alternatively, we could change it to the master branch docs folder, and then if we did that, we would just have to make sure that our index is actually in the docs subdirectory within our repository. But I am just, whoops, I didn't really mean to go back. I meant to go forward, I suppose, to settings. I am just going to do master branch, and then I'm going to, is there a save? Ah, there it is, save, right next to the button. Okay, GitHub Pages source saved. Now that you've saved it, you should be able to go to whatever your username is. So mine's coinuplogan.github.io and the name of your repository. And there we go, it loads. So now, so here I'm looking at it on my own computer, so of course nobody except for me can see it. Now I can close that out, and here I'm actually looking at the GitHub Pages page for my repository, and anybody can go and look at this, and anybody can now come and use my Dapp and click these buttons and do all sorts of stuff. Okay, so that is a cheap way to, well, again, it's not cheap, it's free, and it's a quick way, and it's a free way to get your Dapp interface to be public. So that is pretty cool. Now, the last part of this video, I actually want to quickly go through this code. I'm going to do this quite quick because we're going to cover a lot of this next week. And so I don't want to spend too much time on this. This week is supposed to be more for setting the context and showing you guys all the tools, which I believe I've sort of already done now. But I can go through this stuff briefly. So let's see, I'm going to jump around here. So this is using the deposit contract that we developed on Monday of this week. And after deploying that contract, we want to get the address from it. So this is the address of a specific deposit contract. And then we want to get the ABI from it, which you can get after you compile the Solidity. And whatever compiler you're using, you should be able to get the ABI from it. So with those two pieces of information, that's all you'll ever need to access a contract, whether directly through something like MyEtherWallet or MyCrypto, or whether you're using it to build some interface like we are doing. So I put those at the end just because this ABI is quite long, but all the Web3 code that I'm going to go through now depends on this information. And where it's used is right here near the beginning, right here. So, but before getting there, let's talk about this this chunk of code here. So this if type of Web3 doesn't equal undefined, this is just checking to see if MetaMask has injected Web3. So the way MetaMask works is it actually injects the Web3 JavaScript code into your page. And so you can check for that by doing this. And if it is not undefined, that means it's there. So we create a Web3 object here, and we update the connection status output, which is this right here, to connected. Whereas before you saw it was saying not connected, aborting. Okay, so next we make the contract instance, and we can use the function web3 eth contract, and this takes the contract ABI, and that will return an object that is not really a it's almost like a halfway representation of a contract, because if you just use that, it will just return something that doesn't point to any specific contract. And you can take that object then and say @ and give it the address, and then it will actually initialize to point to a specific address, and it also knows information about the interface. So that is where we use our ABI and our address, and I always do it in one line. I don't see much reason to do it in 2 lines, unless you're going to initialize a lot of different contracts with the same ABI. So, for example, if you're going to make a bunch of burnable payments, you might want to do that. Or if you're managing a bunch of different deposit contracts. But in this case, we're just going to be using one. Okay, another thing, there's a Web3 ETH accounts that returns the list of accounts, and it's a little weird. MetaMask only it provides this list, but it only gives the first item. And that first item is always going to be the one that you're selected here. So my main one here, if I go ahead and refresh this page, it is not showing my address. Now that's weird. I wonder why. Well, if this was a video on specifically focusing on the code, I would worry about that. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll just leave it at this. That should be working, and I don't know why it's not. I'm going to move on, though. We can check the version of the network we're on, and that just means, are we on the mainnet? Are we on Ropsten? And this, every Web3, a lot of the Web3 calls, I should say, want you to provide a callback, and the callback should accept an error and a result, and then you just have to define a callback that handles those. So really, if I say if it's not an error, then update this output with the result. And really, if I was going to, program this much better, then I would have some other thing to happen if there was an error, like maybe console.log error. I mean, I'll just keep that in there because that's better than nothing. And later on, as I say here, I skip this check later. I should really be checking it every time, but I don't. I don't feel too bad about it because this is all just demonstrating the very basics for now. Let's see what else. This contract address, that's just outputting what we've already defined earlier, so nothing too interesting there. Oh, I didn't finish talking about this. You can see that the network ID is 3. That refers to Ropsten here. So if I switch to 1, this will reload and tell me 1. And so when you're developing this, you need to take the number it returns to you and actually know what that number means. And so we could say something like, we could dress this up a bit and say if res equals 1, then we could say, instead of just putting the number there, we could say mainnet, like that. And I don't want to iterate through all the types that we'd have, but I'll just do mainnet and Ropsten. Whoa. Okay, save that. Let's see if that worked. Network ID 1. Oh, you know what? I have not. This is I'm looking at the GitHub, not my local copy. So none of these changes are making any difference. And then we'll do a hard refresh, and it is still. Let's see what. Oh, I'm saving this all to the desktop. Okay, I need to close this and open the right file, which is not on desktop. It is in var www.html. Cool new Dapp index.html. That's what we want. And I suppose I should have kept that open so I could copy and paste the old code. Let's just do that. Hopefully that works. Okay. Copy everything to here. Save. Now, let's see if that works. There we go. It says mainnet. Now if we change to Ropsten, it'll load and say Ropsten. Isn't that just nifty? All right. Still not sure why it's not outputting my user address. It seems like it does sometimes. It might have something to do with when the callbacks get executed. So, I don't know. Oh, you know what? I bet it is. I think I just realized it, so I'm going to go ahead and make the change. Yeah, I am updating this element before it's actually, well, no, it's on load. Well, I don't know. Okay, as I said, I'm not going to worry about it. What else here? So now that we have this contract instance, which we created up here with the ABI and the address, we can get information from it. So anything, if we go to the code, which, where can I find that code? Where did I put that? Let's see, it's probably still on Remix. I'll go there. You have to be careful. I have lost code for contracts before because I didn't really save them locally if I was just messing around and not uploading to GitHub. Because this is just saved in a cookie, I believe. So you don't want to keep it on here. I'm just lucky that it was still here. Anyway, so any these public variables and any function I can access just by saying contract instance dot and then whatever the name is. And if it is a public variable like this deposit holder, then it will return with the result. And once again, you have to specify a callback function. And so here's what I'm doing with the result. And I'm defining that as a callback and passing it to this deposit holder function. And so it uses, that's the technique I used for deposit holder, deposit submitter to, if I go back to here, to load these two values. And then balance is a little bit different. That's not, if we go look at this smart contract, there's no balance variable in here. It's actually a part of the contract. So the way we access that in Web3 is we just use the address. Let's see here. We want to call the Web3 ETH get balance, and we use the address. And once again, we use a callback. But you'll notice we're not actually talking about the contract instance. We're just telling Ethereum, hey, get me the address, or sorry, get me the balance of this specific address. And then also we have to change it from, we're gonna get the way value, which is that's the smallest unit in Ethereum, and we need to then translate that to Ether. And so we can use the Web3 fromWay function to do that. And then we output the value here, and that's where we get this bit from. There's 0 Ether in it. Okay, just a little bit more here. We got these 3 functions, and that'll be the end because this is just the HTML arrangement of my super basic page here. So we have 3 functions: deposit Ether, release deposit, confiscate deposit. A quick note is that none of these buttons check to make sure that I'm the correct user to be calling these functions. The contract does check. So if I was designing a really good interface, the interface would check too, because if it doesn't check and it just sends a transaction that's going to fail, That's going to be confusing to the user because they won't know why it failed and the interface isn't going to tell them. So you want your interface to check. Even though the smart contract will check itself, if your interface doesn't check, then it's going to be a confusing experience for the user. Anyway, so deposit ether. When I click on this button, it's going to prompt me for how much. I'll just do that. Deposit ether. Oh, I need to make sure I'm the right address first. So I want to be... Now by accident, I made this contract with deposit holder and deposit submitter being the same person. That was a mistake. But I mean, it's fine, but it just makes it a little bit sillier, but that's okay. Now I have to remember who this is. It's Alice. That's who this is. Alice is both the holder and the submitter, but I can still demonstrate these buttons. So I click here, how much deposit, how much ether. Ooh, I misspelled that. That's okay. And I'm going to say 0.01. Okay. Now before I click OK, I'm going to go back here and we'll see what it's going to do. First, it takes the ether value, it translates it into a wave value. You always are dealing in wave values when you deal directly with Web3 calls. So you always need to either use the Web3 two-way or the Web3 from-way to translate back and forth. And then I'm going to say, just like up here, I said window contract instance dot deposit holder. Here I'm going to say window contract instance dot deposit. And now I'm actually calling a function. And so first of all, when you call a function, you can pass in a dictionary that it gives it more information about the transaction. I don't want to get into it too much now, but for now, just know that's where we're passing in how much ether should actually be passed. And then we also want to tell it the function to handle what this Web3 call will return. And the Web3 call is going to return a transaction hash, the transaction identifier. It's not going to return the result of the action. It's not going to return, if we go, this is linking up to the deposit function of the contract. Oh, that is popping up. I don't want to do that yet. This deposit function doesn't return anything, and even if it did, the result that we get back wouldn't be the result of that function. The result in this case is going to be the result of our Web3 call, which is going to be the transaction of that action. So that's what's going to happen. Let's go back here and do it again. Deposit 0.01 and OK. Now MetaMask will pop up, and there's our $4.41 USD. It's kind of annoying that it doesn't show us how much ether that is, but that is 0.1 ether, and we're going to confirm. And again, this is all on the Ropsten network. And there it is. So now this is the result that I was just talking about here in the code, and you can see here I've formatted it in that way. So that's how we see it there. Now we can take this, go to ropsten.etherscan.io. Of course, if we were not on Ropsten, we would not go. We would just go to regular Etherscan. I'm going to put this in here. And there it is. So we can see that we've actually broadcast a transaction on Ethereum from our JavaScript code connecting to our Solidity contract. And these two buttons here, I mean, they're mostly the same, except that we don't have to pass any ether value. So, I mean, first of all, we don't need to ask the user for deposit how much ether, because they're just sending a command. And we also don't need to pass that here. We just pass an empty dictionary here. And yeah, that's about it. We could wait for this to go if we want. There it is. It's just finished. So now if we go here and refresh, we should see this balance pop up. And there it goes. And so then I can click on release, and nothing happens. What the heck? Oh, that's because I accidentally went to my GitHub, and I haven't uploaded any of this yet. So I need to go back to my local host, refresh this guy. Release deposit. Uh-oh, it's not doing anything. Let's see if we have any. Release deposit is not a function. That's an interesting thing. So it's saying that this is not a function. I wonder if confiscate works. Confiscate works. Now right now, because Alice is both the deposit holder and the deposit submitter, confiscate and release do effectively the same thing. They take the money out of the contract and give it to Alice. So that is a bit silly. Now this, I wonder what the bug is. The video is almost done. Feel free to stop here unless you want to see how I debug this here. But release deposit, it's saying that that is not a, what did it say? Contracted release deposit is not a function. I wonder if I called it something else on accident in the Solidity code. Let's go look. Oh, I called it return deposit, not release deposit. So I'll just go here, return, save, go to my local version of the file and reload, release, and there we go, it pops up. Now, because I also did the confiscate, if I were to confirm this, one of these would fail because I can't release and confiscate at the same time. Might as well go look and see what happens. And rather than look at this transaction, I'm going to look at the two. So this should be our smart contract. So you can see these two transactions pending. One of these will fail, one of these will succeed. Whichever one is included first in the block will succeed. And then the other one will be invalid. It'll run into a, well, I guess it won't fail, it'll just do what it does but with 0 ether, because the ether will already be gone. So looking at the code here, we have return deposit and confiscate deposit. Oh, I forgot I have this burning functionality in here. So anyway, when one of these goes, it will have sent the balance somewhere else. And so when the other one goes, whichever one the second one is, it'll do the same thing, or it'll do what it's going to do, but with 0 ether, because there won't be any ether left in the contract. I wonder if these are done yet. They're not done yet. Guess I'll give it a second. Give it a moment. Okay, so one went through. It looks like it was the first one that I called, which I believe was the what deposit? Wait a minute. Oh, I must have clicked on the wrong one. And so we can see that it sent some ether to the burn address and some back to Alice. So there we go. And there's our complete, just super basic Dapp. So this is, I guess the very last step we could do is, since we just tested everything out and fixed that small bug, we can go and make those changes. So now if we go git status, it'll show us that it's modified. So we're going to git add again, and git commit, and the message is fixed. Release button bug. Ooh, and I need to do sudo because I'm a bad programmer, because I'm a bad Linux user. Oh, and I need to do the same thing with add. And now hopefully I can still do the commit. There we go. And then sudo git push origin master, and put in my stuff. I wonder if it's possible for someone to get my password just based on hearing me type in my keys. Okay, I guess I was thinking too hard about my password. Let me try again. Oh, I put the dot in coin upload. That's my. Okay, that is good. So now this should be live on our GitHub pages here. Let's refresh and just see if this opens the MetaMask, because if it does, that indicates that our fix went through. It does not. Why not? release deposit. Maybe I just didn't give it long enough. There we go. Yeah, I didn't give it long enough. So now it works. Our GitHub pages now reflects our newest version of our Dapp. So you can, if you want, you can go to this page right here. You'll see exactly the same information I see, assuming that you're on Ropsten. Of course, you won't be able to use any of this because you won't have the right user addresses. And our code does check to make sure that the sender is the deposit holder in the case of these two, or it makes sure that it's the deposit submitter, or where did it go? Confiscate. Deposit. Yeah, make sure it's the deposit submitter when in the case of the deposit. So none of these buttons will work for you, but you can go and look at it and it'll load the information. And likewise, when you publish your stuff on GitHub Pages, it'll be open for anybody else to use. So that's pretty much my development cycle when I'm building a Dapp. Of course, this video didn't cover the Solidity development, but that was on Mondays. And with this video, I've shown you that if you do have a smart contract out there and you know the address and the ABI, it doesn't even need to be your contract, really. As long as you know the information, then this is a really quick way to get it going. You get a web server on your own computer to test and debug and develop, and then you can upload it to GitHub Pages, and then you'll have a live online interface for your Dapp, just like that. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.